As much as I hate to share this, I feel like I don't have a choice anymore. If I don't tell it now, I won't ever have a chance. Maybe I'm a moron for having played that game. Or maybe this would have happened anyway. But I've made some terrible mistakes. And I can't just sit and hope they'll go away. Of course, I should clarify first. This, whatever it is, it started when I first bought a Pokemon game. Diamond to be exact. I've been kind of a long-time Pokemon fan, but I hadn't played any of the games from the 4th generation. It was a pretty trustworthy store. The game was brand new, still in the plastic wrapping. Everything was fine when I took it home, until I popped it into the rather beaten up DS I had. Really? I should have known it was a warning sign when the game already had a save file. That couldn't be right. It was still in the wrapping when I got it. Unless, of course, they repackaged it. I was beginning to feel a little scammed, though nothing like this has ever happened to me before. But swallowing my anger, I decided to check the file. The character was just named Start, and had a 0 for every stat upon loading the file. I was just right at the beginning of the game, in the middle of the main character's house. Start was a pretty accurate name. This, though, was around the point when the awful whirring started. It was like a high-pitched power drill, though the sound was very faint. It was just a little annoying at the time, but I'd shrugged it off as the speaker's starting to break. The DS had been dropped on the ground one too many times before this. I didn't find anything interesting in Start's save file, so I just deleted it to make my own, going with the simple name of Diamond. The game had started and progressed as normal, albeit with the faint whir in the background all the while. I chose a Piplup, naming him Droplet. However, something odd happened, as my rival Barry had the first battle of the game with me. Each turn, a little text box of some sort would say something about Droplet, despite how irrelevant it was to the battle. Droplet is muttering to itself. Droplet is hopping around with excitement. Droplet stuck out its tongue playfully. This confused me, as it had nothing to do with the battle, and I hadn't heard of any such feature being implemented in Diamond. But it wasn't too annoying, and admittedly, it was even kind of cute. I just took it as a feature of the game that I wasn't told about, and finished the battle. Barry's defeat dialogue, however, was strangely unnerving to me. "Hey, are you alright?" That's all it was. Just that simple, innocent question. I'm not sure why it bothered me so much, but upon reading it, I just felt horribly uncomfortable. The worst seemingly amplified 1,000 times in my head as I read it. It was rather odd for him to ask right after losing, and from what I'd seen of him, it didn't seem like something he'd ask out of the blue. It didn't let me answer his question, however, as the game went on as normal, with me spotting nothing else particularly odd. As I played through the game, Droplet followed behind me, his friendly face reassuring. I was told that there was a Generation 4 game where a Pokemon followed behind you, so I guess I just assumed it was this one, and thought it was normal. I'm not sure how long I played. I'd gotten the whole way to Celestic Town, but I felt like I needed to take a break. Droplet was now an Empoleon, his mid-battle messages more serious and mature, but it felt natural to the game at this point. Any other Pokemon I used had little mid-battle messages as well, though Droplets were naturally the friendliest. But I felt like I needed to take a break because I was now realizing just how tired I was. That's when I noticed the blood dripping down the buttons on my DS. Honestly, I'm surprised the thing didn't short out. At first, my fingers felt entirely numb, though they were bleeding and covered in blisters. In fact, my whole body was numb. But as the blissful numbness went away, I was in agony. It wasn't just my fingers that were hurting, but my eyes too, feeling terribly dry. I had a pounding headache and the whir of the DS just kept on going, seeming more like a terrible screech that kept ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing. Despite my pain, I forced myself to get away from the now blood-covered DS and head downstairs to bandage my injured fingers. My vision was horribly blurred, but even then, I could tell it was sometime in the afternoon. I had started playing yesterday evening. Wrapping my fingers in gauze, my mind barely registered that it may have been a better idea to call 911, but I was too tired to care. It didn't help that my thoughts were muddled by the persistent whir still going on despite my distance from the game. I felt sick to my stomach, painfully staggering back up to my room to go to sleep, yet reaching over to my DS to shut it and put it away. I saw a text box pop up on the screen. Droplet wants to know if you're alright. I just closed the DS, pushing the system away and getting into bed, wanting to just sleep forever. I guess I went to sleep so easily from the exhaustion, because otherwise, I would never have been able to sleep through the whirring sound. It was a lot fainter now, but it was still there. It was definitely still there. I certainly slept for a while, and while I was still very sore when I woke up, I felt far better. The whir only lingered in the back of my mind as I went about my day as normally as I could, though my thoughts kept drifting back to the game every so often, usually accompanied with a sudden mild headache. Sometime later, most likely late evening, I didn't check, I found myself heading back to my room and opening the game again. It wasn't the brightest idea. Well, actually it was downright stupid, but I felt compelled to keep going. I wasn't even sure why, at least not consciously. I don't even remember having cleaned the blood off the DS, but it wasn't there when I opened it. Droplet is getting worried about you. Another message on the screen. The little overworld sprite of Droplet seemed sincerely sad. As sad as such a sprite could look anyway. I felt tempted to talk to the game and tell Droplet that I was okay. But it was just a game. It couldn't hear me. Besides, if I said I was okay, I'd be lying. Even my in-game sprite didn't seem okay, with the trainer looking incredibly pale. As I began to move in the game, I noticed that I was going incredibly slow, decreasing in speed more and more. Droplet is very worried. The screen was darkening now, the whir getting loud and grating, and so painful. And so loud. I was slightly noticing how hard I was pushing the buttons, so that it hurt just to move. Droplet is worried. Droplet is worried. Droplet is worried. Droplet is worried. The text box didn't go away. It just went on, getting continually more and more distorted as the screen grew darker and darker. The whirring was growing continually distorted, though whether or not that was the game or my head causing that, I don't know anymore. The next couple of minutes are kind of a blur in my mind. I'm not sure what happened, but I do remember that when I was in control of my game again, my character was in a simple room with a grey floor and black walls. Well, really it was more of an unshaded grey square in a void. But as I could walk on only the grey part, the void was kinda like walls. There was nothing but my character in the square. Droplet wasn't even there, though upon checking my Pokemon, he was in my party at least. There was no music in the room, only the awful whirring noise which wouldn't go away. Who are you? Why are you here? What's wrong? This kept popping up on my screen, but no matter what I did to try and make it go away, it wouldn't. Despite it being there, however, I could still walk, though the text box obstructed part of the screen. All I could do was walk in circles uselessly, as there was nowhere else to go. After a while of doing essentially nothing, something interesting happened. A screen full of buttons popped up, with a message above them saying, "Press the buttons." It was something like Simon Says, which I guess I was decent at. But after a little bit, I made a mistake, and an awful electronic screech played, causing me to clutch my ears in pain. "You're no good at this. You're no good at anything. Why are you here? Get out. Get out." With that, the message vanished. I was shuddering violently, wanting to put down the game. It didn't make any sense, and it was unsettling me for reasons I didn't understand, as though it was awakening a primal, uncontrollable fear of the unknown. And the whirring didn't stop. It just didn't stop. I wanted to go away. I was beginning to have trouble breathing, but I didn't know why. It felt like my throat was just tightening up and choking me. I had a deep gut feeling that it had to do with the game, so I shut it as quickly as I could while still struggling to breathe, ejecting the cartridge from the game. That was definitely what did it. And when my DS shut off, I could breathe just fine again. Not wanting to take any chances, I threw the game to the floor and began to stomp on it, only hesitating for a moment. After it was thoroughly destroyed, I thought it was over. But the whir was still there. If anything, it was louder now. I laid down in my bed, still shaken over my experience. How and why was the game choking me? What the hell was I just playing? Many thoughts rattled through my mind, but never any that gave me answers or helped me. The following week felt empty. My friends were worried about me, saying that they hadn't seen or heard anything from me in a few days. I didn't explain why. Everything just felt like I was going through the motions, but feeling nothing. My head filled entirely with the faint whir. But I felt better, albeit dazed. I felt like I could return to normal after that experience. Maybe if I wasn't so foolish, I could have. Feeling bored one night, when my thoughts were more muddled than normal, I wanted to play Pokemon Emerald. I knew this cartridge was okay. I had played it several times, and I on my current run was almost at the end of Victory Road. But booting it up, I felt a familiar twinge of discomfort. The whir was amplifying, but I didn't realize it at first. When I hit continue, I was immediately thrust into a Pokemon battle, much to my shock. A wild Empoleon has appeared. My mouth was agape as the impossible sudden encounter came into view, but my surprise immediately turned to horror as I saw the sprite. One of the Empoleon's wings were missing, cruelly bandaged over but still leaking blood. The crown-like crest on top of its head was completely broken, and various parts of its body were scuffed up and covered in blood. The Empoleon looked sorrowful, hunched over and in obvious pain. Despite the battle just starting, its health bar was already in the red and pitifully small. Droplet understands why you did that. Droplet forgives you. I cringed, both out of guilt and from the sheer volume of the whir. Sending out my Sceptile, I didn't even bother to attack, but instead went straight for Pokeballs and threw an Ultra Ball. It worked without even shaking. The battle screen left, and I certainly wasn't in Victory Road. The place I was in looked like something out of a corrupt game. The walls and floor, garbled and colourful. The location name appeared in the corner, labelling the place as somewhere. How helpful. There were NPCs everywhere, some being silhouettes of Pokemon and people, and some being distorted, garbled forms, often with hideous deformations. Droplet is so sorry for getting you involved in this. Droplet is suffering. Talking to the NPCs, most simply sprouted gibberish or asked whether or not I was alright, though some simply said were, over and over again, making the awful noise get louder and louder until they stopped talking. One, however, said something very interesting. This particular NPC had a far larger sprite than the others, and its horrid appearance made me cringe. It was like a hybrid of a human and an Arceus. The human body stretched into painful proportions it should not have taken, with fleshy tendrils contorted in the shape of the wheel. Worst of all, however, it was riddled with tiny holes, some bleeding and others full of eyeballs. It played a heavy, slowed down version of Arceus' cry as it spoke. Who are you? Who are we? We're you, and you are us, and everyone is everyone else, and it's your fault. Were. You keep hurting everyone because you are blind, and we keep getting hurt because we are blind. You know what you did. My head was reeling. The headache was so bad, I couldn't understand what the thing meant at all. I couldn't understand anything of what was going on anymore. And everything hurt. Everything hurt so much, and it won't go away. It just won't. You never helped your friend when he was hurting. He's dead now, because of you. What of your dad's accident? You called him at the wrong time, and now he is gone. The thing just kept listing more and more and more and more of the mistakes I'd done that had hurt people, and I felt sick with guilt. I didn't know what was going on, and I felt so small and pathetic and confused as all of my mistakes were listed out to me. My hands were dripping blood, but I didn't care. Everything hurt, and I couldn't care. All there was now was guilt and whirring. Droplet wants the noise to stop too. Droplet wishes you didn't have to find out about this. I'd broken down into tears, getting the system soaked, though it should have stopped working ages ago. Droplet wants to tell you how to make it stop. What he said next? Well, I feel like it's too personal for me to share. But what he said to me helped me understand. It's time to go. On the screen, everything had vanished but the little trainer and Droplet, and they walked into a bright light, going somewhere I can't name for his sake. And after I'm done writing this, I'm gonna go fetch my knife and find out just what that place is like. I can only hope that Droplet was right about the whir. Thanks for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed the story. We're at the end of this one, but there are plenty more you might not have heard yet. So here are some options: my entire Pokepasta playlist, or a story that YouTube thinks you'll like from me. With all that said, I hope you leave a like, maybe a comment, and if you want to hear more, subscribe with notifications to get the latest stories as soon as they're available.